finding that right person and then finding that person that's coachable,
Yeah.
It's like one thing. It's like if there's something going on with an employee or a subcontractor and you're like, okay, we've invested some time in him. Like, do we keep him around or do we move on? Right. So you're like, is it skill or is it will? Because I can teach you the skill, right? But if it's the will, like I can't teach you to have the will to do this, right? Or there's a lot of good people that are grumpy or whatever, and they're not going to do it right at the end of the day. They don't care. They just go home and you're like, no way. Like that's what we can't have,
That's amazing. The skill and the will.
Skill or the will. So the skill, if it's a skill issue, we can fix it. If it's a will issue, that can't be fixed because that's on you. You can fix it, but...
Hey, welcome back to the Pursuit of Property podcast. Today we are sitting with a friend of mine, Casey Hammond, owner of Icon Construction, one of the best construction experts that I have met in the business for renovating properties, both custom $1 million homes to more simple, remodels. Casey, Thank you for joining, man.
For sure. Thanks for having me on.
Dude, last night was fun. We went to dinner, hung out a little, and it's been cool. I want to kind of share some backstory. As for context on why you're here, we've used you personally for some projects recently, and they've gone super, super well. But you and I were talking, I don't really know the full backstory of who Casey really is and how you got to this level of what you're doing. And so we wanted to have you on, talk about your experience, kind of getting into the construction world and then kind of what you do and maybe some of the things you see people needing some advice on.
Yeah, totally.
What were you doing before you were, remodeling homes?
So I actually started working at DeChico's.
No, savage.
And I still eat there. So I started working there and I had some buddies that were like finished carpenters, cabinet installers, stuff like that. And their business had a Christmas party at DeChico's. And I was talking to them throughout the night while I was working. And they were like, come, we'll give you a real job, So the next day I went down there and got a job for like $8 an hour or something.
When was this?
Man.
Ballpark.
18 years ago, maybe?
Wow. Dang. So the early 2000s.
Yeah, because I was like 19 or 20 or 20 years old, maybe, something like that. I can't even remember.
Yeah. So you got a job.
Yeah.
What were you doing?
So I got a job as apprentice cabinet installer. And in that business, I kind of have an artistic view on things, and I was able to incorporate that into that kind of work. Like it was more finished work, not like digging holes and pouring concrete and stuff. It was more like precise work, and you had to see perfect, And I worked with some really, really skilled, intelligent people, and that wasn't easy to work with them, especially with no knowledge in that kind of work. And I don't know. I'm very competitive. So when there's a challenge in front of me, like I always got to win. So I excelled quickly at that, and I felt like I moved up in that world really quick. And I just I used that skill for multiple years, like cabinet install, and through that I started learning other things and meeting all kinds of people, and started realizing like, hey, I can do all this stuff. This isn't like brain surgery or going to the moon. So, it just takes patience and attention to detail, and I could do that, and show up every day, right? I felt like I saw people making good money in the business. So versus going to college, which I kind of started doing a little bit after high school, and I was like, you know what, this isn't for me. I need to go. Things need to go faster for my life, So just got a bigger network and bigger skill set in that industry. And then people started hiring me to be like a manager instead of like an installer. So I was able to like talk to people and talk to customers and things as well as do the job. One thing I never learned, and I still don't know, is like how to speak Spanish, which I wish I would have started learning in the beginning. So
Yeah.
for anybody listening, like learn how to speak Spanish. It's very important. But I just, through that, I just learned like, hey, like there's a bigger world to this. And, if I'm going to be managing all this, like I could own my own business doing this. Right. But, at that time I was like, I could do it, rah, rah, rah. But looking back now, I'm like, no, I couldn't. I still needed to spend, another 10, 12, 15 years doing this trade and to really be confident, like truly confident in what I do, which I am now. So through that, I worked under a lot of people. I've worked all over California, big and small jobs, commercial as well as residential. And then about in 2015, 16, I'm like, hey, I need to get my license, right? And I partnered up with a couple people, and I started Icon in 2016. And just from there, I started learning, the business side of construction as well as more of the trade. Like I'm still learning every day, something new of what to do or what not to do. And it's just, it's where how it started and where I'm at now.
So you're almost 10 years into Icon, right? We're coming up on 10 years. What has been, and before that, it sounds about like 10, 15 years just climbing that ladder, just going through learning all these different trades. For the past 10 years for Icon, what has been the craziest part of owning your own business and being the business owner?
So the craziest part is just implementing systems and following them yourself as well as, making sure everybody else is following them and developing on them further and not just keeping everybody comfortable and complacent in what we're at, And then another thing is like the customer service part. I feel like in the construction world, it's really easy to skip that.
Yeah.
And when you work in people's homes, like you're like part of their life. Like after a couple of weeks, they're like, when are you going to be done? Some people, they're like, they don't want you to leave ever again. They want you to live with them, but all of our guys, they're nice and they come in and talk to people, the customers, and there's a lot of respect from the customers to our workers. And I feel like it's just a good experience.
Yeah.
For the customers with that customer service, having the right subcontractors in place. It just, I feel like that customer service part is very important.
Yeah.
Very important. And that was like a big thing about being successful in the remodeling world, or, we built a house in Shell Beach. We did that. There was a couple other random cool things that we did during that time.
And you just rattled off right before the podcast, like 4 really cool projects you're doing just here in town.
Yeah.
And they're all very different.
Definitely.
So, you've got a huge breadth of construction knowledge. Like, did your family do construction, or did you learn all of this in that 10, 15 years?
No, I actually learned all of this in the 10, 15 years.
No way.
Totally.
You had no construction background prior.
Other than building forts in my backyard, which I was really good at.
So one night into Chico's where you're like, fuck it, I'm going to go and get a job tomorrow. Freaking change. That's
everything.
Freaking awesome.
And I will say this too, is I took a pay cut from my $100 a night to $80 working, 8 to 10 hours in the day for $80 or something.
Like actual hard physical
and having
labor.
to, have a truck and have tools that I had to provide. I feel like the construction world, you have a lot of sacrifice on one side, but there's a bigger payoff, especially if you're good at it, than if you just stay in the in another business.
Yeah.
That's not like the restaurant business or something. I feel like I guess if you go into management or something, it's all great. Everybody has their own thing, but construction world, I feel like, literally the skyscraper is the limit. You know what I mean? Like,
Literally, yeah.
Like who will,
Well, help me understand, because you said that you felt like the customer service was overlooked for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like on top of that, though, the finish work is overlooked often. A lot of contractors, they've really got a good grip for like the basics, right? Getting stuff 80, 90, 95% of the way done. One thing that stands out about you to me has been the punch lists that I see for the projects we've used you on are impressively small. Your team, because I can't guess that it's all you, but you and the people that you've picked to work on the projects, they've got the customer service locked in, but they're also just good at their trade, which I don't think is common, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, so we definitely have been through people, different subcontractors and employees to find the people we have now. And we still have people, I still have people like working for me since day one where I was like, I'm doing this and you're working for me. I still have top-notch people that are still with me today. And you met them last night.
Yeah, I met a lot of them yesterday.
As well as new people, but yeah.
Is it hard to find people in the construction world that are both good at not only their job, getting it through the finish line, and the customer service, or has that been easier than you expected?
No, so there's definitely some subcontractors that excel a lot more at that, and we, try to make sure that they stay on our schedule full time because good people, they're busy,
Yeah.
So, and my job is to make sure I have work in front of everybody and I have a system of scheduling that. And, this good subcontractor is comfortable doing all my work because he knows in 3 months, he knows the job is there for him already from me,
Yeah.
And that's what I do, is getting the work and making sure we're moving forward always. And that's important for those quality contractors to know that. So, I hear a lot of other general contractors and remodelers and stuff, and they're like, well, where do you find people and how do I get, and it's like, you got to go through some people first and like figure it out, and you're like, okay, I got to stop hiring, my best friends, and like they're not the best people, some of them are, some of them have, and they have been too. A lot of my great friends still work for me too. But it's finding that right person and then finding that person that's coachable,
Yeah.
It's like one thing. It's like if there's something going on with an employee or a subcontractor, and you're like, okay, we've invested some time in him. Like, do we keep him around or do we move on? Right. So you're like, is it skill or is it will? Because I can teach you the skill, right? But if it's the will, like I can't teach you to have the will to do this, right? Or there's a lot of good people that are grumpy or whatever, and they're not going to do it right at the end of the day. They don't care. They just go home, and you're like, no way. Like that's what we can't have,
That's amazing. The skill and the will.
The skill or the will. So if it's a skill issue, we can fix it. If it's a will issue, that can't be fixed because that's on you. You can fix it, but usually that's, going to happen for you later on the road, hopefully, right?
That's very well-timed advice.
I'm curious, for you personally, do your biggest challenges come from the business side that comes with being the boss, or does it come more on the actual project side on the stuff that you guys are working on?
So my biggest challenges is definitely not the working on the project side. That's just, my systems and my management and making sure that we're doing the little things on that side, right? Because once you start not updating this one thing, then you have you have this big problem at the end of the day or at the end of the month or whatever. But for me, it's about getting that work. Like I was saying a minute ago, like being like, I have a responsibility to all these people to make sure I have work for them, right?
Yeah.
And my business, keep my business alive. So I'm like, we have all this great business right now, and I'm happy about it, but I'm not satisfied. And I'm like, I need jobs for next year already, and I need new customers that are going to give me jobs for the rest of our, for 40 years from now, like, which I have another one that we do is Clovis Unified School District. And we've done multiple projects for them now. And that's a good one. I feel, where our insurance is and our name and our dependability and integrity, allow us to be able to have work for like Clovis Unified School District where, there's children and, it's a lot of strict rules and our employees have to meet a, standard and, run it through public works and having prevailing wages and being able to run that through your system. A lot of contractors, they couldn't handle that.
Yeah.
A lot of people actually cheat that system and don't pay their guys the prevailing wage or, that's happening out there. And, it's very important. We're following the rules and we have been, so we grow. And every time, we circle back around and, make sure that we are following the rules everywhere and doing what we're supposed to be doing, we grow again. We keep growing that way. And not backing ourselves into a corner or limiting ourselves,
Yeah. With all the variability in the stuff that you guys work on, I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier, like building, the home in Shell Beach or renovating $1 million houses, all the way down to doing work for school districts to doing mom and pop renovations too, right? What would you say, is there any commonality no matter what thing you're working on? Is there something that never changes, or is there always either similarities or differences, like with just so much variability in those projects that you're working on? Is there any commonality between those things, whether it's in your processes or your approach?
I feel like the communication, and that, I guess that's just with everything in life, right? Like, it's just communication. Like, we have to have like a standard of that, of, your response time, and you ask questions and you, you're communicating through emails so everybody can always go back, because some of these jobs are long-term projects that take 2 years.
Yeah.
So you talk about something in the beginning and we start something and then everybody changes their mind, but having record of that, and all projects, small and large, definitely need that. So I would think that was the most common, most important thing.
I was going to ask you about that because, documenting that communication has to be huge for your business, because you're putting these guys out, they're doing the work, and my experience has been you don't get paid until certain work is complete. So making sure that your team has record of, hey, we're doing this job, we've bid it at this amount, the client signed off on it, this is how we're getting paid, and making sure that your guys who did the work are getting paid on time. Has that been at all difficult for you guys with clients, or not really?
Not really. We have a system of checking work to be done correctly and on time.
Yeah.
We have a system of billing and paying out that, and I also feel like we pay out fairly quickly too.
You do, yeah.
Right, versus other companies, and I feel like that we're tight on that. We do trust our subs too, and I feel like I've worked for other people or even done work with them, and I can't work beside someone who doesn't trust all, you know what I mean? Like, obviously you're not going to trust them with your life, but you have to have some kind of trust so that your system will work, right? And then you have certain people that you trust a lot more to watch those things, and then.
Well, just like there has to be trust between on that end too, I would think there's also got to be some level of trust between you and the client and the customer.
Definitely.
Right? So when, regardless of the type of project or renovations that you guys are doing, what's the biggest thing between your relationship with the client or customer that leads to project success?
So we have a system from the beginning. Like, if someone calls, we have screening processes and different things, and then we figure out, is this project right for us? Is it right for them? Are we the person to even be talking to? Maybe you need to talk to an architect or an interior designer first. We kind of determine that in the beginning, and then develop a relationship with the customer, which I always tell customers too, especially when I like them. I'm like, we also choose the customers like you choose the contractor. Because sometimes you're like, I don't feel like if I feel like you just don't trust me, and from the beginning, there's a lot of people out there that just don't trust.
Right.
And I can't have, just like in my business, I can't have work with this distrust or any relationship, right? It's like you can't work with it. So we feel for that too. People have been done really bad by poor contractors, you know, whether they're licensed or not. Like they're out there.
Why is that so common?
I am not sure.
I
haven't really given it so much thought because I'm trying to find the other opposite end of that. So I don't linger. My thoughts don't linger over there, but I'm not sure. I feel like it's not as common here as it is in bigger cities. So I've actually worked with other investors and contractors who scale their businesses outside of the Central Valley, up, into Northern California, Sacramento areas, Texas, like Austin, Texas, and bigger cities. And I helped and learned a lot in the process of like finding people to add to the team over there, right? And man, I was fooled a couple times, and I thought I was good.
What happened?
At reading people. So you just
like you don't have to use names or anything like that. But what happened?
So you go and you're trying to figure out like. So first I'll go to like Home Depot and go to these supply stores. I'm like, who are some contractors that come in here that you guys refer, right? And everybody's like, well, there's this guy and that guy. And I'll go to Home Depot and talk to someone inside the store and be like, hey, are you a contractor? Whatever. Calling other realtors, getting people to give me referrals and stuff. And having like an interview process on the job site. And then, people... everybody's different, and you have to trust them to figure it out, and these guys have licenses, they have nice trucks, they look clean, and they come in, they'll, work, they're fine for a month, and then they start lying or wanting more money, and they don't have enough money to finish the job, or there's a lot of different variables in that, and I've just learned, like, you can't trust, like, you can't just trust someone because the way they look, the way they talk, the way their truck look, like, like.
How can you start trusting the right person? Like, is it like a trust but verify?
It's definitely your system of like, I'm not giving you half the money down up front, especially in a new relationship. It's like, here's your, I believe the actual law is $1,000 or 10%, whichever is less, is what your down payment could be to a contractor. So everybody can remember that. And,
to start a job.
To start a job, yeah. And then you can take draws after that, But I want to have like walks, make sure that we've reached this part of the process in order to confirm that these bills should be paid because the work's been done or is about to be done or whatever, right? Or you need a material draw like confirmation that all this appliances and the floors and everything have been ordered at some point. So communication,
Yeah.
If there's no communication there and you don't have the systems or you have too many projects and you don't have the time to keep going back to them, you're gonna have problems.
So do you feel it's important to walk each project?
Oh, always. Yeah.
Even if you're the owner and you have a contractor that you trust?
I feel you should always
be walking.
Yeah, I feel like the second that you stop walking jobs, like you open the energy out there that you're not walking these jobs. And it's like, if it's like, how are you going to be if you're at home with your wife's gone for 2 weeks, or if she's there, your house is going to be a mess and you're eating Doritos on the couch, right? Like, it's like you kind of need that fire there all the time, it makes you better.
Accountability.
Really 100%. So I feel like you got to, even with myself and Icon, there's times where I could get so busy and I'm like, oh man, I need to come back and make sure people realize I'm still there. You know what I mean? I'm right there for anything. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's important.
Okay. You and I were talking the other day.
Okay.
Because we did some projects the last few months and you had some really insightful feedback for our team about places in our system that we were falling down. And our business is different because it's strictly remodeling and selling properties. It's not we don't have really any projects on our primary residences. So for those clients who are fixing up investment properties, rentals, or even resale, things like that, what are the common mistakes you see investors doing that are pretty universal that you feel like people aren't talking about?
Well, I think it starts right in the beginning with a plan, and it's knowing your budget and knowing the actual cost of what things are going to be, and allowing for some, unforeseeables, especially if there's a project that's a 100-year-old house, or, because every house is different.
Yeah.
It really is. And there could be one thing that you overlooked, and it's like, man, that's $20,000 worth of tree roots into my pool, and oh my gosh, that's devastational, really. So I feel like there's a lot of people out there, and they can get a house and they fix it up and paint it with their brother-in-law and whatever they do, right? And they sell it and they make a little money, and then now they're like, "Well, flip houses," and and they never even worked in in the industry and had like systems or anything, or they haven't experienced those failed jobs and all blown budgets and why, and found all the best prices on things and have the best contractors and the best materials.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of factors there.
But you think the one that you see a lot is just poor planning for what actual cost of the budget will be?
Yeah. So poor planning up front, and then just making sure that you have the right inspections done right off the bat.
What do you recommend?
So I recommend that you get a pest inspection, definitely right in the beginning. And then maybe a roof cert or a roof inspection, definitely. If you can obviously see it's a brand new roof, I wouldn't pay for it right off the bat, but.
What about HVACs?
HVACs. So I always call HVAC guys out to our properties. Definitely. Usually everything needs a service, needs the thermostat adjusted right. Like things need to be cleaned off. It's real important.
Gotcha. And the purpose of doing that up front is
a lot of work, like say a pest inspection, right? It'll show, hey, there's, rot underneath the shower that you thought you were going to keep. And that, that's another $7,000 and plus the pest work. And, so it's good to know those and have those in the beginning, because during the demo and rough phases of the project is the time to do that work.
Yeah.
Not in the end, which a lot of people end up like, oh, now we have a pest report after we remodeled this house. And I've worked places and worked with people, and they'll just do that over and over. And I'm like, man, and it's for me, it's also inconvenient because I'm trying to be proactive and schedule things up. Mm-hmm. And if I'm having to go back to these properties later on multiple times, another thing that comes up is make sure, and this is on the back end, is like make sure that when you agree to do these pest reports that someone else brings in, because sometimes you have your own and then someone else brings another one in, make sure they're actually going to buy the house. Because we've done multiple requests for repairs and different pest reports, and then none of those people bought the house. And I've seen people spend over $10,000 on stuff like that, and then in the end, it really didn't need to happen because someone came in and bought it and didn't care about that anyways. So I think there's something within there, making sure that this needs to be done.
Yeah, from a realtor's perspective, the way that you do that is you get the request for repairs. There's a section and a box to check. When you as the seller agree to a certain set of repairs, you can make it a quid pro quo, where essentially it says, yeah, Casey, I'm going to do these repairs, but you're going to remove all your contingencies. Mm-hmm. And if you don't perform, I get the earnest money deposit back. Mm-hmm. So, that's typically about 1%.
Yeah.
So that's your coverage.
I see people not doing that. I feel like they had little handshake deals or something, and they were trying to be ahead, right? But really it put you behind.
That's back to that communication, having everything in writing.
Yep. And those are little things, those little system things that you just have to follow every time. And, creates a lot of chaos. When you're trying to go forward and pick up momentum, you can't be going backwards. Like it's discouraging to like the whole team. Like it's, I've seen it, I've experienced it multiple times.
With the systems and the processes and the relationships, everything that's been built, by you and your team at Icon over the past, close to 10 years or so, what do you feel in these next, obviously with the new year coming up in the years ahead, what needs to continue to be refined for you guys, if anything?
So I feel like we have, we're all really following our systems right now, which are, like I said, are always growing, and we're always adding to them and changing them. But I feel like it's time to add more people to our team. And then in order to keep growing, I feel like we have those systems, we have these things. Now I need to add more people, and the right people. And so we're like, at that point, you're like, do I want employees? Do I have other subcontractors, because interior designers and draftsmen, like they don't necessarily work for Icon sometimes, They can, but just depends, right?
Is that hard for you to find really good people?
It's actually not. I feel like I'm I'm like the guy standing at the store and like looks over and talks to you. So it's really not hard for me to like talk to people and like, judge them and figure out if, what I mean, if they even have a shot at, me testing them out, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm really good with that whole.
What does that process look like when you're bringing in a sub? Like, is that like a 30-day period or is it like a 60-day period?
So it just kind of depends. Like, we're definitely not going to throw him out in someone's house or something. I might use one of my personal projects or something. And, definitely I go check people's work, especially on things that have like expensive material. Like, I'm not, have this guy over here and miscut all this tile. And then it's like, oh my God, right? Like,
yeah,
you
it's
can't
a
learn
huge
like that.
issue.
So, we've done that before, and I'm like, man, like this can't happen again. So
you put them on kind of smaller projects that you can really watch them. And then is it like a probation period for like a period of time?
Yeah, definitely. Some shorter than others. Right. But we do watch them for a little bit, a little bit closer, the quality and dependability. That's one thing too, is like, we have schedules, we have a lot of jobs coming in, like you better be there. There's always things that come up. How do we adjust to not lose a day on the schedule or mix someone around? Like, you have to be able to adjust on the fly. Like, I can make a schedule for your project right now and it's not going to be that, but I'm still going to hit that date because I'm able to adjust every day, or,
Is that a common issue? I feel like most remodelers I see, and most investors specifically who are not contractors, they buy a project and they always underestimate how long it will take to get the job done.
Yeah, so I'm very tough on, if you're still here and this guy's coming in, like the painters are prepping on top of you while they're standing on your back, taping the ceiling off while you work. And the guys are rough on me about that, but I feel like that's that fire. They know like it's not going to change for you, Mm-hmm. There is a little bit to that, like the work still has to get done right, so sometimes, we have to push our schedule, which we do, which I would say 20% of the time, at least. That's probably a minimum you're going to push your schedule,
Yeah.
And that's being good.
Well, I was going to say, I'd say the average person pushes 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Like from my experience, the guys that are doing one or two projects, a year, or even up to one or two projects a month, if you're doing 25 houses a month or a year, I still see those guys, every deal they go over on their timeline. Mm-hmm. That seems to be a very common problem.
Yeah. It's just that planning up front. And then also, if you're just a guy doing, and if we're talking about, to buy and renovate and sell houses, like I feel if you're the guy doing 1 or 3 or whatever projects a year, like you're not going to get all the experience that quick, and you're going to go 5 years like being a slug or whatever. Not everybody, but a lot of people. They don't have all the tools like me and you and all these people are like a very important tool to be a finely tuned machine.
They don't have the opportunities to fail fast enough to actually clean it up.
Yes, correct.
Well, and I feel like another part of, kind of those built-in timelines is, I mean, even if you have, a client or a customer and the relationship with you guys, you can put together this ironclad plan up front, right? But no matter the project, there is always going to be the things you can't account for, the unexpected that can always pop up that can never be a part of that plan, which can always push back that time frame anyway. You know what I mean?
I feel like when I create a project, a schedule for a project, I feel like I would rather have that schedule that's like almost best case scenario, so that I'm trying to hit a goal. Like I have my project managers, I'm like, it has to be done by this day, but it really might not, but it's like, that's that fire. And I tell myself that, like, no, I have to be done before, like right now, we got Christmas, right? I literally have 10 projects going, and like every single one of them are like, are we going to be able to have Christmas in our house? Like, yeah, I like, we're giving our best shot. Here's our re-updated schedule. Here's what we did to try to, get ahead and, without, jeopardizing the quality, right?
Without cutting the wrong corners.
I would rather someone be mad at me for being late on their project than live in their house for the rest of their life and look at their crooked tile or whatever. I'm sorry I was late on your project, but it's tip top.
Yeah.
I did that on my house, dude. I paid a painter to paint my house before I moved in, and some stuff happened. So he went from having a 5-day period to paint, which I thought was ridiculous, to a 3-day period to do an interior paint. And he kept going, yeah, I can do it. I walk around my house and I constantly see overspray on cabinets or somewhere here. And I'm like, dude, I should have given this guy more time and held off moving in and just said, screw it. I'm going to wait. I won't move in that day. Just do it right. And it's exactly what you're saying. I jeopardized timeline, or I jeopardized quality to meet a timeline that really didn't matter.
Yeah, patience is the key, definitely, in getting something done right. But at the same time, things aren't realistic. And honestly, there's projects you can't do if you can't meet the deadline. So, I mean, sometimes it's just, that's how it is, especially on commercial projects. That could really be a big problem if someone can't open their business and maybe making money because your painter's still going and the material's not there yet, or there's an issue. Like there's no excuse no matter what. So it's always important.
Dude, you are a wealth of knowledge. We wanted to have you on the podcast because there's people listening who maybe don't really know who to trust in terms of who's somebody that is reputable, who knows the business, and that they can call. For the guys that are listening who do have projects and they do need help, I know you and I talked about this. There's new disclosures coming out in the new year that require work to be by licensed contractors, and they may have been doing a lot of the work themselves, and that may not be a possibility for them in the future. How would they get a hold of you and see if they're a client you would take?
Yeah, definitely. Everybody's welcome to call our office line at Icon. It's 559-326-0777. And someone's usually available to answer. If not, we'll get right back to you. And we have our phone screening process, and we could go from there. I know there's some people out there that probably get a hold of me directly, and that's fine too. I'm always willing to look at stuff, and there's, I could probably open your eyes to more options to, maybe like you didn't think it was going to work like this, but it might work like this over here, so.
Yeah, you provide a great creative solution side. That's that creative side that you were talking about at the start.
Definitely.
I know it was a shorter conversation. It's hard because construction is one that I think we could probably do a whole series of podcasts about.
Never ending.
Yeah, how to handle remodels. Is there anything else that you would leave with the guys listening and gals that you really want them to understand going into 24 if they're remodeling homes? Is there any singular tip you'd leave?
Just make sure that you call Icon.
Yeah, baby. There it is.
So really, I just make sure that you actually I tell people get multiple bids on things. Feel like if we might not be the right personality fit for you, but just be confident and don't be in a hurry. Like make sure things are good in the beginning, and then usually you have a much higher chance of them going smoother. Through the end.
A lot of preparation.
Definitely.
Dude, Casey, thanks for coming onto the pod on a Thursday morning, right before Christmas. We appreciate your time. And, dude, we'll have to have you come back on and maybe do a deal breakdown and talk about some of the deals that we've done recently and some of the cool solutions that we've done.
We have a bunch of stuff coming in, so it's going to be good.
Let's do it.
Dude, love it.
Thank you
have
guys
a good
for
rest
having
of your
me.
day, dude.
Yeah,
Thank you.
For sure.
Boom.